We're going to talk about the Mike Waltz, Jeffrey Goldberg incident, in which Waltz was the national security advisor in a chat on Signal, which is an app, a secure messaging app. He was discussing an impending attack on the Houthi rebels in Yemen, and he inadvertently added Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, who does not have security clearance, to a very, very sensitive and top-level secret. He added him to that chat group. Okay, so of course Jeffrey Goldberg raised a ruckus. Everyone knows about it. It's embarrassing, etc., etc. So what's my take on this? So, a few points that I want to make here. The number one question we need to ask is, was it appropriate for these principals, quote unquote, these are top-level executives in the IC intelligence community, was it appropriate for them to use the Signal app as a secure messaging service? Now, we are presuming that the government has much more secure, proprietary ways of communicating such highly sensitive information. We are presuming. We don't know. I certainly don't know, but I'm assuming that they have other ways of doing so. So the question is, why use Signal, and whether it is, whether the security is sufficient. Now, on this question, most people, including an article in the National Review, most people are assuming, like I'm talking about even on the right, are basically saying, no, it was wrong. You don't use a commercially available messaging app for this. You gotta use what is authorized and proper and super secure as mandated by the government. And I don't agree with this. Okay, so for several reasons. Number one, these are the executives that essentially make the rules. Okay, remember, this is an enforcement arm of the government. Okay, so they have a lot of discretion as to how and when to enforce the law. Okay, obviously they're not allowed to violate the statute, but there is no statute on this, right? Congress doesn't say what exactly the government should use when communicating top secret information. So they're allowed to, I mean, again, these are the principals, the highest levels of the government who deal with such matters. And so if they are deeming this okay, then it's okay. And nobody can second guess their judgment on this. Now, if the Biden administration wants to reverse course and do things differently, of course they're entitled to. But this is exactly why we vote every 4 years for a president, is because there is, in fact, executive discretion as to such matters. Okay, so that's number one. Secondly, I would say is that the whole premise that the government is better at doing things than the private market, I just don't agree with that. I honestly don't think that it's more secure. I'm talking broadly speaking, that would have been more secure and less susceptible to hacks or whatever other compromise such sensitive information can have, if it were, if this information is communicated by Signal versus a proprietary government solution. And the only reason I'm saying this is because I just don't think the government is good at these things. They just hire negligent contractors and who don't do a proper job or make it very clumsy and cumbersome to use the app. The government is just not good at these things. And so I just honestly think that if you just if you just use an off-the-shelf app, I mean, that's what they do, right? They are professionals. Signal is a professional app designed to be secure. So that's what they do for a living, right? And to me, that's plenty good enough. So, okay. So that's that. Second question is, I addressed the question of whether it's appropriate to use Signal or not. Now, second question is, how did he get at it? Now, I watched a Fox interview on this. Mike Waltz was interviewed, and based on his answers to this question, which I have no reason to doubt or cast any aspersions towards, and so based on his Mike Waltz's revelations in this interview, I believe that it was inadvertent. And more specifically, what happened is he meant to add someone else. That's what he said in the interview. He meant to add someone else. And somehow, his info, he used the word, he got sucked in. Very, very funny. Okay. He got sucked in. Jeffrey Goldberg got sucked into the chat group. Okay. So he's not giving specifics. He's not giving like literally the specifics of exactly what he did and how it happened, etc. But what he is telling us is that it was inadvertent. He meant to add someone else. It was inadvertent. Okay. So that answers that question. Which brings me to the last question which is how bad is this gaffe? I mean, I call it a gaffe because it is a gaffe. And when you hear my answer, you'll understand what I mean. I don't think it's anything even close to catastrophic. And people need to have a sense of scale, a sense of proportion. And what I noticed a lot of times in this, especially in the partisan environment that we're in. So, you know, the opposing side is always going to assume the worst. They're going to take a small matter and just completely assume that, you know, that the Houthi rebels found out and pilots died or could have died or would have died. You know, the worst possible outcome could have happened and should have happened and would have happened from this mistake that he made. And it's nothing even close to this. And I'm going to tell you why. Okay? So here's the worst possible scenario. The worst possible scenario is when someone who is literally a traitor, okay, steals information, right? They hack in, like on modern times, it'll probably be through hacking into a computer. But in ancient times, it would have been like, you know, breaking in to someone's property, etc. They take highly sensitive government classified information and they literally hand it over to America's enemies. Okay, that would be treason. That would be treasonous. That would be a very, very highly punishable crime. Now, so obviously that's the worst, right? Okay, so lesser than that is when someone has malicious intent, but they didn't necessarily steal the information, right? Maybe they found it, and maybe they negligently handled it or passed it on negligently, not thinking that, hey, this person that I'm communicating this information to is probably an enemy of the United States and will use it against it. So that's number 2, severity. Number 3 is when you didn't even mean to convey that information in the first place because you thought that you were in a secure app and somehow someone got added to the app or someone, you know, I mean, this is really the equivalent of eavesdropping if you think about it, even though he was added, right? But imagine if I talk loudly about the plans that I am going to do to attack the Houthis, and it so happens that somebody is passing the hall who doesn't have security clearance, right? So what then? What am I going to be, hanged for this? I mean, of course not. Okay, so yes, I shouldn't have done this. I should have been more careful. But okay, at the end of the day, it's inadvertent, right? I didn't mean for you to overhear my conversation. You were not supposed to hear it. I didn't do it on purpose so that you can hear me, and then pass on this information to the Houthis, right? So, and another mitigating factor is it was a single individual who is not an enemy of the United States. There was no chance at all, I hope, that Jeffrey Goldberg was going to somehow pass this information, relay this to the Houthis. And lastly, I should say that even if the Houthis did find out, okay, if push comes to shove, in the worst case possible scenario, that the Houthis did find out, it wouldn't have mattered because what are they going to do about it? I mean, they don't have any anti aircraft weapons designed to shoot down whatever American aircraft are used to launch this type of attack. I mean, they're not sophisticated fighters. Okay, they have some weapons, Iranian weapons, but they're not compared to the U.S. They're no match. So no, I disagree emphatically with this assessment that they put our troops at risk or anything like that. So in the absolute worst case scenario, what would have happened is they would have had some type of, they could have prepared and maybe avert a total annihilation, right? They may have moved some weapons in the last minute, something like that. But yeah, nothing nothing drastic, and certainly no life was at risk. So bottom line is, it's a whole nothing burger in my opinion, and it's partisan. And for any conservative or somebody who approves of the Trump administration, for them to hop on this bandwagon of criticizing them is, I think, you're being it's a red herring. You're being misled, and you're being used as a useful fool in the partisan and biased campaign that the left is waging against Trump. So don't do it. Okay? So thank you for watching, and enjoy your weekend.